Begin the current Daf, Mesech the Sotah Daf Zayin. We begin on the second line down at the top of the Amud with the Mishnah. We continue with the next Mishnah, continuing on the theme of the next stage in the procedure of the Sotah, which we spoke about the kinui, the warning, the stira being secluded, and now we don't know. She's a suffix Sotah, and the Mishnah continues. So what do you do to go ahead and verify if she was mezano or not? She is corresponds to Bakazich and Cheskel, turn to Daf Yomi, Hashem is for today's Daf. Something discussed in today's Daf are that when they're on their way up to Yerushalayim to drink the Mei Sotah, that the local bezin sends along two Tamid Chacham along with them. That's either, as the Gemara will discuss, because of Yichud, we're actually concerned for the seclusion of this woman with men, or because they'll have a Sadib al-Asaruya, or it's actually because we just want two witnesses to be able to testify, say that, or to warn them to say, hey, you're not allowed to be with your wife because she is a suffix Sotah. Suffix Sotah is actually forbidden on her husband. The halacha of, as the next Mishnah discusses, ma'ayman aleha, regarding that we intimidate her, we try to scare her off from going ahead and having God's name erased, and we want her to admit her guilt. Kaisim shaver is the Gemara at the end of the Dav's discussion regarding that if we write a receipt, generally when a woman's getting divorced, or do we not, and how that plays out in the case of the Sotah. So begin the current Daf Zayin, second line down at the top of the Amud. Says the Mishnah, okay, Kitzad Oisala. So how do we do this process of the suffix Sotah being verified by the drinking of the Sotah waters? So says the Mishnah, first stage is the husband brings his wife to the local court. They send along with him two Talmudic scholars to go along with them to Yerushalayim, because maybe the husband's going to be intimate with his wife on the journey, which, what road are we talking about? Because since he has to give it a drink in Yerushalayim and the Bez Nagel, as we're going to explain later on, so in that journey we're concerned that in that interim they might stop in a motel and be intimate, and they have to go ahead and stop him. He says, no, he disagrees with Tanakama, and he says that Bala Neman Alahu. The husband is trusted regarding the wife, that he's not going to be intimate, and you don't have to send along two Talmidei Chachamim for that purpose to stop him from being intimate with his wife. So the Gemara makes a dik, interesting dik, that relates itself to another halacha. What you have is, you told me according to Tanakama, that you have the husband with the wife, and two Talmidei Chachamim. So says the Gemara, Trei ve'ihu. So it's 2 plus 1 plus him is hatlasa. So you have 3 people going along with this woman. Says the Gemara, Rav. Let's say this supports Rav. What's this teaching? Rav, he says, Loishon, we didn't learn. In Mesech Kedushin, there's a Mishnah that says that there's an Isra of Yichud. A man is not allowed to be secluded with a woman, but a woman is allowed to be secluded with 2 men. There's no Isra of Yichud, 2 men and 1 woman. So Rav said, we didn't learn that Mishnah that 2 men are allowed to be secluded with a woman, Ela Be'ir, only in a city, in the populated area. Avol Baderech, but if they're on the road, which that's what we're talking about over here, we're talking about that there's a road, there's a journey that they're on, then Ad Ika Shleisha. Then no, 2 men are not allowed to be secluded with a woman traveling together on the road. You need to have 3. Why? Because maybe one of them is going to have to go ahead and relieve himself, and therefore, if you only had 2 men and 1 woman, comes out that he's leaving the other man, and the woman alone when he has to go to catch himself some laboratory somewhere to go relieve himself. Sehiroso, since if there was only 1 shliach bezdin, 1 Talmud Chacham, let's say, and the husband, since both of them are forbidden to the woman, the husband's forbidden because she's a suffix Sotah, and the other man obviously because she's a married woman. So it wouldn't be enough with a total of 2 people, because maybe the husband or the shliach bezdin will have to go and relieve himself. So therefore, that's why they have to send along 2 Talmidei Chachamim, so that there's a total of 3 people. 3 men are permitted to be secluded with a woman, baderech. That's what the Gemara wants to say. Seemingly it supports Rav's teaching. Says Gemara, no, not necessarily. Here the reason is not based on yichud, it's kihechad lahav sahadi. It's simply because we want to have witnesses to testify if the husband was intimate with the wife. They're going to come to the Bez Nagel and say, hey, the husband was with the wife on the road, and we're not going to give her a drink anymore, as we're going to explain later on in the Masechta, that the halacha was only said that she can be checked out only if the husband is ho'ish menuka ma'avan. But if the husband had been with the wife after she had already become the Savik Sotah, which she was forbidden to him, then the water is not going to do anything. So those are two diyukim. Why did it say you send along two tamid chacham? Either because of the halachas of Yichud, like Rav said, which is because you need to have three people, but and the husband is also forbidden in the wife, so you need a total of three, or because, simply that we just need to have witnesses if the husband was intimate with the wife. Now the Gemara makes another diyuk in the same type of comparison. Besides the fact that we said you send along two people from the court, we also mentioned that it's shnei tamid chachamim. So the Gemara again makes the diyuk, tamid chacham in. Sounds like only Talmudic scholars. Kulam aloi. But general population, no, we don't send along. Says the Gemara, let's say this supports the other teaching of Rav. He says, we didn't learn that a woman could be secluded with two men, only if they're upstanding individuals, two fruma yidden. And there's a woman that there is somewhere in a building secluded. Okay, they're having a meeting. That's okay. The locked door. The two men can be with the woman if they're upstanding. Aval perutzin, but someone that's inappropriate type of a person. Afila socha namiloi. Even 10 men cannot be secluded with one woman, because generally the idea is that you have another person. So it obviously is a preventative measure. But when you have a parutz, you have someone that is breached in their morality, so then 10 people is not going to help. And the Gemara says, Ma'isa, it actually was a story. 10 men took out a married woman out of the city, b'mita, meaning in a coffin, under the presumption that she was dead, to go ahead and to be inappropriate with her. So it doesn't help how many men there are. It could even be 10, and they're going to go take to this ruse just to go ahead and be mizana. So seemingly that the reason why the Mishnah said we send shnei tamid chachamim is because we just established that you have to go ahead and be concerned that on the road that there's going to be one person who goes off. Okay, fine. So you'll be left with 2 instead of 3, but 2 is only by, says Rav, by ksherin. By psul, it's not going to help. So seemingly that this is like what Rav said, that's why they have to be tamid chacham, because if they're not, then it wouldn't help even if there's 3 people totally, which would leave you for 2. Says Gemara, no, hacha hainu time. Here the reason why they have to be tamid chachamim is the yadi la asruyebe. It's just so that they know how to warn them and to tell them, wait a second, you're going to be intimate with your wife. The Torah says that if the man is not cleansed from his own sin, if he was intimate with his wife when they were engaged, the water's not going to check her out. So they have to be, the only time the Chacham know how to warn them is say, hey, I want you to know, you're taking of your wife because you want to prove your point and you want to check her out. It's not going to help. And only time the Chacham know the intricacies of halacha. So therefore, again, that's a second rejection. The Gemara had 2 attempts at proving Rav's halachic teachings regarding yichud. A, that it has to be 3 baderech, and 2, they have to be tamid chachamim. And that the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. The reason why we're sending shnei tamid chachamim, 2 is to say testimony, and tamid chachamim is simply to be able to warn and let him know that don't do this because it's not going to help. So the Mishnah had said the next opinion. He says, Ba'ala v'chulu. He says, the husband is believed regarding his wife that he's not going to be intimate with her, and therefore you don't need to send along 2 tamid chachamim to prevent the husband from being intimate with his wife. So Tanya, learn the Brisa that elaborates on this opinion for Yehuda. Yehuda says, Ba'ala Neman, the husband is believed on his wife, and you don't have to go ahead and appoint witnesses to go along with him up the journey to Yerushalayim. And he says, Mekabel Chaimer. What's a Kabel Chaimer? Uman Nida. If half a month, a husband's wife is a Nida, is a menstruating woman in halacha, Shehi B'kares. It's a chiv of kares to be intimate with a nida. And yet, Ba'ala Neman Allah, we have every husband being secluded with his wife. So Sotah, so the suspected adulterous wife, Shehi Balav, which all it is, a negative prohibition, because the Torah says, La Yuchel Ba'ala Harishan, which the Gemara says in Yevamis in the first parak, what do I fulfill with Achari Ashur Hutama? Meaning, La Yuchel Ba'ala Harishan is talking about the Isser of Marzi Girushasai. But then it says seemingly unnecessary words of Achar Ashur Tama, which simple translation is after she's been intimate with another man. But what's Hutamo? That's not really the appropriate wording. So the Gemara Darshans, that includes a Sotah Shenistara, where she was tumma from a man, which she was secluded with another man. So that's where the Torah is telling lo yuchel. So that's the negative prohibition that we learned it out. Okay, but it's just a lav. Lo kolshkin, isn't it all the more so that for sure, if we believe a man with a need, which is chiv of kares, for sure you're going to trust him with his wife when she's just a negative prohibition. But for Rabbanan, they contradict that kal v'chomer. They say, no, he hanei senes. This is what's the given point. In other words, the characteristic of that you're bringing as a proof of what you're trying to say, to contrary, that's exactly what we say. Why you need to send along Edom? Why? Because nida the kares, a wife when she's a nida, that's a kares chamirale. That's severe to him, and therefore he's not going to be intimate, and therefore mehemen, he's trustworthy. But Sotah Daf, this is his regular wife. She's not a nida. She just went to the mikveh 2 days ago, and just a negative prohibition. Loy chamirale is not so severe to him, but loy mehemen, and therefore actually contrarily, that's why we don't trust him, and therefore we have to send along to Edom. Says the Gemara, the following question: Rabbi Yehuda mikabel chayma ma'isula. So this brayso that we quoted had it as Rabbi Yehuda saying his opinion from a kabel chayma. That's why you don't need to have two Edom. Is that really so? But Rabbi Yehuda mikayim ma'isula, Rabbi Yehuda actually brings it from a pasuk. The time like learn the brayso says the pasuk in Bamidbar, behavior ha'isha sishtei lakayin. A man's going to bring his wife to the kayin. So what that teaches you is that minat Torah ha'ish maybe is ishtei. The man brings his wife. That's it. Husband and wife. But the sages said, you send along two Talmid Chachamim. Why? But maybe he's going to be intimate with his wife, so you need to have them to warn, to testify. Fine. That's the Tanna Kama. Yosem, he says, no. The reason why the husband doesn't need Edom is not because of pasuk, it's a kabel chaymer. Because a man needs to be kares. Again, the same thing Rabbi Yehuda was quoting in the first brayso, what Rabbi Yossi says in this brayso. If a nida, which is a punishment of kares, bala nemala, the husband is trustworthy, just him and her, not to be intimate with her. You don't need to have two Edom every time the woman is a nida. Sotah shibalav lekolshken, the Sotah that's just a negative prohibition, isn't all the more so. Amr loy to the Chacham said to Rabbi Yossi, loy, no. If you're going to say by nida, the reason why the husband is allowed to be secluded with his wife, even though it's a chiv of kares, sheken yesh lo heter, because she's going to be permitted when she goes to mikveh in a few days, and she'll be purified. So therefore, the husband's inclination is not so powerful because he's confident he's going to wait a little bit, so then she's going to be permitted to him. What are you going to say about the Sotah? She'ein lo heter. If it turns out that she actually was mizana, that's it. Never again he's going to be allowed to be intimate with this woman. Oh, so therefore his passions are pursuing after her. Like Va'imah, like the pasuk says in Mishlei, Mayim genuvim yimtaku. The stolen waters are sweet, Begayim, etc., which the pasuk there ends. V'lechem sisachim yinim, and the hidden breads, oh, that's pleasant. So here where you have this woman who is off limits already, almost, because she might be forbidden forever, therefore, meh, and therefore, that's why actually we would be concerned. And therefore, there's no kal v'chaymer, and therefore the Chacham disagree and say, no, you have to send along two Talmid Chacham. So that was Rabbi Yossi, who wants to say kal v'chaymer, Chacham would disagree with the kal v'chaymer. And then you have Rabbi Yehuda Omer. He says, no, minat Torah, it's from the Torah, that her ish, maybe it's ish de'elakayin. Meaning we learn that from a pasuk, that is, only you need is the husband and that he brings the wife himself. Kashnema says in the pasuk, the man brings his wife. So wait a second, is Rabbi Yehuda learning out like we just said in the second brayso from a pasuk, or is it like we had him in the first brayso, the way Rabbi Yossi said in the second brayso from a kabel chaymer? So says the Gemara, Amalahu kabel chaymer b'reish. Truth is that first he told them a kabel chaymer, like we said in the first brayso, uparchua, but then they went ahead and they refuted it because, like we said, shekin yesh laheter. They said that no, neither is not a kabel chaymer because she's going to be permitted. So therefore, that's why you believe him, but by Sotah not. So therefore, b'hada amlu kra. Therefore, that's why he subsequently brought a pasuk. So it's not a contradiction. It was in stages. But then the Gemara has one final question. It says behind the Tanna Kama. The Tanna Kama, the brayso, he also says it's minat Torah from a pasuk. And then we quote Rabbi Yossi, and we quote again Rabbi Yehuda. Seemingly, they're the same opinion. And that says the Gemara. The difference between them is avol amru. The Tanna Kama said, but the Chachamim said that we're going to send along two Chachamim, which because we are concerned that maybe he's going to be balaha. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold of the Aval Amru. He doesn't hold that there's even a rabbinic concern, and therefore he holds that no, like we said in the Mishnah, Bala Nemanala, we don't need anyone more than the husband.
Rarely do you see something that off these far, you don't even need a raya in the Torah that they need shmir. Here's a lady who has one of two options. She's going up there, she has to drink Sotah, which possibly risk her life. A, B, or she's going to lose her husband. So she's going to do everything she possibly can to be with her husband. That could be a very strong argument.
Are you saying not even from the husband to the wife, you're saying the wife to the husband?
The wife wants to be loyal with the husband to avoid the Sotah.
Right. But it sounds like that the husband is the primary character. You're asking why won't we be concerned that the wife will seduce the husband, but the husband knows that. So the husband's like, I want to get this woman.
Women have that.
Right. So he's saying he's very angry, right? She was Mazana maybe, right?
That's why they need shmir, because she has a way.
Okay. Good shaila. Maybe that goes into to what the Chacham are saying back, but it sounds like that Rabbi Yehuda held that no, we're not concerned for that. So then we continue with the halacha of the next Mishnah. The Mishnah continues on this the journey, and once they finally came up to Yerushalayim to the Beis Hagadol, so the Mishnah tells us Hayamal Noisla Beis Hagadol Yerushalayim. So they would bring her up to the high court, the Sanhedrin that's in Yerushalayim, and they would intimidate her. They would scare her that she should admit. Just like they intimidate when someone is testifying for a capital punishment court case, which the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, that they tell the Eidim, say, look, buddy, I just want you to know that testimony for capital punishment is not the same as the monetary case. As the Gemara goes through in Sanhedrin of Zayim Alf, they intimidate the witnesses. So that's what they do over here to the Sotah. And they tell like this, Biti, my daughter, Harba Yain Oisa. There's a lot of things that wine does. Harba Schleika is a lot of things that laughter does. Harba Yaldus is a lot of things that immaturity does. In other words, that causes a young woman to come to sinful type of ways. And maybe it's true. And therefore, don't bring yourself to this repulsive death that's going to happen if you go along with this procedure of the Sotah. There's a lot of things that bad neighbors do, which Rashi says, interestingly, a bad neighbor knows how to seduce, and they're always around. So they're always enticing. These are the shchainim you want to stay away from. So a lot of things that, that guy next door a lot of things that bad neighbors do. And therefore, Asi l'shmai hagadol, do for God's holy name, shenichta b'kedusha, which is written in sanctity, shelo yimcha alamayim, that it shouldn't be erased on water. We know that the Sotah, God takes his name, and it's erased in the water. They're trying to tell her, don't cause that desecration of God's name. Again, they're trying whatever tactic to stop her, to admit her guilt. And they tell her things that are not really appropriate for her to hear. Not even he, not her, and not her whole father's family, because they tell her the words of the tzaddikim rishonim, as we're going to quote in the Gemara, of the avos, from the shvatim, that confessed to their sins, which is it's obviously not the same level, but we just want to confess for her sin, as the Gemara says later on. Even Yehuda admitted, and he wasn't embarrassed to say that he had caused the situation. So therefore we tell her also, look, the big tzaddikim also, don't worry, David HaMelech, there's all these stories, don't worry, you can admit. But really it's not kedai for her to hear, because it's not like the same type of thing. We have a woman being mezana, it's not the same as by the tzaddikim, but Im Amr, if she says to Meyani, okay, you're right, I was mezana. Okay, then the procedure is like this. Sheveres ksubasa. So, what does it mean they break her ksuba? In other words, they write a shaver. A shaver is a receipt on the ksuba, and they write like this. I was mezana, I lost my ksuba, and then they take that receipt and they give it to the husband so that she can't claim her ksuba at a later point in time. And then she leaves. She's not executed because she wasn't warned with Adam during the time when she was mezana. So, that's it, she's done, she's out of the house. Now, but let's say she says, no, it's not true. I didn't do anything, I'm tar. Okay, then they continue on. Malanaisa l'shar hamizrach. So they bring her up to the eastern gate, which is the outer gate, which is where they enter into the Harabayis. Shal Pesach Shar Nikoner, which then that's to the opening of the Nikoner gate, meaning from there they took her to Shar Nikner, which is the upper gate by the wall between the Ezras Yisrael and the Ezras Nashim. The reason why it was called Shar Nikner was because there was a great person that brought copper doors from Alexandria of Egypt for that gate. There were many miracles that happened with it, as the Gemara says, Yomid of Lamazayim Beis, and it was called on his name. So that's called Shar Nikner, which by this Shar Nikner, they did a few special procedures. Shasham Mashkin Asaitis, that's where they would go ahead and give the Sotah to drink the waters, because, as the Gemara is going to learn later on, it says Lefnei Hashem, and the Shar Nikner is right there facing towards the Heichel, so it's considered Lefnei Hashem. Now, why specifically over there did we do these procedures we're saying, is because that gateway was not sanctified with the Kedusha of the Azara, the thickness of that gate. And the reason for that is because one of the three we're going to mention are the Mitzayran, the Mitzayra. The Mitzayra would stick their behinas, their thumbs, to have from the blood of the Asham put on their thumb. The problem is, Mitzayra at that stage is what's called Mechusi Kippurim. Mechusi Kippurim, because he didn't yet bring his carbon, because it's not done, right? You have to spray, you have to put on him and then go do all the Avodah. If he would come into the Azara, it would be Chiv of Karas. So therefore we had to make that the gateway of Nicanor was not sanctified, that they could stand over there in the gateway of the Shar, because if the Kohen would spray it out of the Azara, well then it would be possible because of Yotze. It left the perimeter of the Azara. So therefore what happens is the Mitzayra stands there in the gateway, and then they stick their thumbs into the ear space of the Azara, which, as the Gemara tells us elsewhere in Zvachim, that Biyah B'miktzas is permitted. So a partial entry sticking in your thumbs is permitted. So you have to have that fine line that to stand in the gateway, and we therefore, although all the other halal of the sha'arim were sanctified, we made that one unsanctified because that's what opens up from the Ezras Nashim to Ezras Yisrael. The Azar, when we call Azar, doesn't mean the Ezras Nashim. It's only the Ezras Yisrael. The Ezras Nashim was a large open area there by the Beis Hamikdash. So if you're in that gateway, you could stand there because it wasn't sanctified, and then you stick in your thumbs, and that's being mixed because you can't spray the blood out of the Azara. So there was a few that were done over there. One was the drinking of the Sotah, and also Umetaranes HaYoldos. That's where they purify the woman who gave birth, which the Gemara in Daf Ches is going to explain what is that. And number 3 is Umetaranes HaMitzaran, like we just explained. That's where they purify the Mitzayra, spraying the blood of the Asham Mitzayra on the Mitzayra. Okay, so that's where we have her stand. Now, the Kohen oichiz bebigdeha. The Kohen grabs a hold of her garment by her neckline, and he grabs her there. Now, im nikru, if the garment tears, we're not concerned. So nikru tears. Vim nifremu, we're not concerned. Now, what's prima? Prima is more than just tearing. Prima is when it tears into many pieces, many tears. So he grabs a hold of a neckline. If it tears one, tear fine. If it just like shreds the whole thing, we're also not concerned. But the point is, Atru Megales Liba. The point is, until her chest is uncovered, which more later on is going to learn that from a pasuk that this is supposed to be done. And V'seisur Sarah, they also undo her braided hair, which more later on is going to learn that also. That's how we set the stage for the procedure. Rabbi Shloimy says, if she had a beautiful chest, then they wouldn't uncover it. And if she had beautiful hair, so they wouldn't undo that braided hair. So although like messing up a woman's braided hair is usually disgusting, but if a woman had beautiful hair, so then they wouldn't do that. Now, if she was wearing white garments, so we cover her with black garments. Let's say she had on golden ornaments or golden garments. As we continue to Talmud Beis, v'katliyos, which is a type of an ornament, like it's like a half a circle open, which it would use to close the garment like a snap, but it was like a half of a circle that was an ornament, and it would surround the neck from the sides, or nizamim, or earrings, or nose rings with tabayis and regular finger rings. So we took all this jewelry, all these beautiful garments off of her, again to make her disgusting in the state of the Sotah. Now, then afterwards, maybe Chaval Mitzri, doesn't mean Egyptian the way Rashi says it, but from the word of tsuri. I mean, it was made from fibers. That's what tsuri means, from the palm tree. which is the sieve, the bast that grows around the palm tree, which is wrapped around the tree. They would make this rope from that. And what happened is, again, like they tore her garment from the neckline, and her chest was uncovered, so that her garment shouldn't fall down to the ground. They would tie this rope above her breasts to keep the garment on her. Now, whoever wanted to see this whole procedure, the ceremony, would come and see, except for her slaves and her maidservants, because she feels greater than her slaves. So if someone's going to see their family members, their slaves, their house cleaning help, they're going to become stronger in their will, and they're not going to be afraid and not going to admit. Now we want that she should admit, and Hashem's name should not be erased for nothing. So we don't want to have any of our people over there, her cleaning help, because she's going to feel, a little arrogant, and she's not going to want to admit. So therefore, they cannot be there. Now continues the Mishnah. All women are permitted to see her, which the Gemara is later on going to ask on the Chesem Beis and say, wait a second, you just said whoever wants to come to see her could see her, which sounds like men and women. And now you're saying all women are permitted to see her. But Shenem, like it says in Pasuk in Yecheskel, V'nivaschu kol ha'anoshim, that all the women should be rebuked, v'leisasena kizimaschena, and that they shouldn't do the way you were mezanam, like you plotted. So therefore, that's the purpose of having people there, to see what happens if you commit such a sin. So the Gemara goes and explains the details of our Mishnah. Starting off with the first halacha that we said, that we took her to the high court. Says the Gemara, from where do we know that you need the Bezdin HaGadol, the supreme Jewish court, the Sanhedrin? Because as Rashi explains, although we know that in Yerushalayim you have to give it a drink, it says, we know that the kohen is having the woman stand in front of Hashem, but says Rashi, the best nagadol of 71 Sanhedrin, how do you know that's not valid with one of the other two courts that was there of 23 judges? One sat by the Pesach of the Harabayis, and one sat by the Pesach Hazars. The Gemara says, although it has to be in the temple complex, there were two other lower courts of 23. How do you know you need to have the best nagadol? So it says, Asya Teira Teira, it's Gzeira Shava from the word Teira, which Ksivach, it says over here in Bamidbar, when it says by the Sotah, it says, V'asla kohen eskala Teira, the kohen will do for her the whole law. Uksivasim says over there in Devarim, when it talks about the Zokin Mamre, the rebellious elder, it says, Al Piyat Teira, that you shouldn't remove yourself from the Teira that they teach you. Malahal, just took over there by the Zakin Mamre, the rebellious elder, is B'shivim ve'echad, it's with 71 elders, like it says in the Pasuk, Min hamakom hahu, from that place. What's that place? The designated place. What's that? It's a Lishkas Hagazis. That is, even if the Zakin Mamre, the rebellious elder who wants to go not like the way the Sanhedrin Paskin finds them somewhere else, Abi Pagi, and he rebels, the Gemara learns out in Sanhedrin of Yudal that it won't be a rebellious, it has to be specifically by the Sanhedrin of 71, and in that place. And actually Teza asked, then why wouldn't you say the Sotah also has to be like that? But be that as it may, Afkam B'Shiv Mechad, so to over here, it has to be with the Sanhedrin of 71, just like we say that the word Torah, but it means the 71, so to over here, it means the 71. Now then the Mishnah had said, okay, we intimidate the woman, we try to go ahead and get her to confess the truth and not to have God's name erased for nothing. Now, the Gemara says it seems to be contradicted from the following brisa, because in our Mishnah it sounds like that we try to only intimidate her not to drink. But the brisa says as follows, just like we intimidate her that she shouldn't drink, we say, hello, buddy, we'll admit what happened, you don't want to have this terrible death. But says the Brisa, just like we intimidate her not to drink, we also intimidate her yes to drink. We tell her, Biti, my daughter, if it's clear to you that you are pure, Amdi al stand on your clarity, rely on your purity, Vishasi and drink it. Don't worry about the drinking this. Because these bitter waters are not comparable to a dry potion, shemunach al basar chai, which is placed on raw flesh. Meaning, if there's a wound over there, machalchal v'yored. Certain medications, look, they could have a potency if there's a wound over there, so it'll go down and it'll clear out whatever's there. And that's the point that, if you did something wrong, it's going to go ahead and have its activating ingredient. Ain't shamake ain't mal klum. There's no wound over there. It doesn't do anything. It's harmless. So therefore, don't worry if you're pure. But the one thing is that what the Gemara's question is, it sounds like that we don't only intimidate her not to drink. It sounds like we even convince her yes to drink. Says the Gemara, it's not difficult. Because Kan Kodim Shenimcha Megillah. Our Mishnah was talking about before the scroll with God's name was erased. Because we don't want it to be erased, we intimidate her only not to drink. Kan La'acha Shenimcha Megillah. The Bryce was talking about, it was already erased, and then they tell her words of consolation to drink. Don't worry, if you're pure, to permit her to her husband. Because we don't want to be afraid of the water, and she's going to say, okay, I'm tummy. Because if she says that, she can walk off, she won't get her ksuba, she'll walk off and live a life. But, and if she's tummy, she's going to die a dastardly death. Now, really she's tar, but she's so afraid of it, of what might happen, so she might say Tameani, but then she's going to spread rumors about herself and about her children, and we tell her, don't worry, if you're tar, don't worry, you could drink, nothing's going to happen. So it depends if it's before it was erased or after it's erased. If before it's erased, we don't want God's name to be erased. And we're going to do whatever it takes for her not to drink it, to admit. But afterwards, once it's already erased, we're more concerned for that. We say, don't worry, if you're tar, go ahead and drink it, because we're not at any concern anymore of erasing God's name. Then the Mishnah had said that after it's erased, so then at that time we say, don't worry, drink it. So actually this is back to our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, when we didn't erase the Megillah yet, so again we want to influence her to confess. So they would tell her, Biti, and they would even tell her things that are not kedai for her to hear, her and the whole family. So what does that mean? So learn the Braisa that they would tell her some homiletic, agadic teachings regarding and regarding different stories that happened in the earlier writings, meaning regarding things that are written in the Torah, which were happened in the earlier days. For example, like the pasuk says in Eiv, that they would tell her this agadic teaching, Asher chachamim yagidu, that which the sages tell over, meaning that they admitted on their own sins, and they didn't hide away their sins, from their fathers. Who's they referring to? And that refers to Yehuda. He admitted, and he wasn't afraid, he wasn't embarrassed from the story with Tamar, where he says, Sadka, mimeni, she's right, it's from me. She wasn't Mizana as a Shemeres Yavam, it was her father-in-law, me, Yehuda, that actually did it. Maha Yosef, what happened with Yehuda? Nochel Chayoy Mabo, he inherited the life of the world to come. Also, they tell her, Reuven admitted and he wasn't embarrassed by the story with Bilhah, as the Gemara is going to say later on. Maha Yosef, what was his end? Nochel Chayoy Mabo, he inherited life of the world to come. And what was their reward? So the Gemara jumps in and asks, what do you mean mascharan? What was their reward? Because you just said that they merited the life of the world to come. No, the question is, what was their reward in this world? That's what the pasuk there says in Eiv. After that, lahem lavadam nitna haaretz. To them alone the land was given, because as Rashi explains, Yehuda merited to malchus, as the Tosefta says in Masechtas Brachas, and Reuven merited to take the portion first in Eretz Yisrael and Eva Yarden. So to them alone the land was given, either because of the kingdom, that's Yehuda, or because getting the first portion, which is Reuven. And no foreigner shall pass between them, which Rashi brings from Rib Tanchuma, Medrash Tanchuma, that when was it that no Zar passed between them? That was when Moshe Rabbeinu came to bless them. When Moshe Rabbeinu blessed them, he blessed Yehuda and Reuven together, so therefore no one passed between them. But again, those were the two tzaddikim of the Shvatim that they weren't embarrassed and they admitted. So the Gemara says, we understand that by Yehuda that he admitted the chsib. We have a pasuk in Bereshis. So Yehuda recognized the signs that Tamar was sending him, that he had given to the Zaina, his seal and his stick. But he says, she's right, it was from me. Says the Gemara, how do we know Reuven admitted to his guilt? and he wasn't ashamed. Because Amr B'Shmuel Malach Meinam Re'echanan says, Maidich said, wasn't in the pasuk in Devarim. It says, when Moshe Rabbeinu was giving the brachas to Klal Yisrael, he was going from tribe to tribe, similar to what Yaakov Avinu did. He says, Yechi Ruven Val Yamas. Let Reuven live and not die. And then the pasuk says, V'zois Liudah. Now, so Rashi points out, you don't have by the bracha of any of the Shvatim that starts with V'zois, except over here. What's and this? So it sounds like it's continuation from the bracha with Reuven. So it says, Rabbi Yechanan, all those years that the Jews were in the desert, the 40 years, the bones of Yehuda were rolling around in his coffin. Meaning, as Rashi gives the background, the bones of all the Shvatim were brought up from Egypt. And that's what Yosef said at the end of Sefer Bereshis to his brothers, that you're going to take out my bones from here with you, meaning with your bones. So the bones of all the Shvatim, their skeleton was intact. But Yehuda, his limbs were disjointed and they were rolling around in his coffin. Why? Because he excommunicated himself when he was guaranteeing his father Yaakov that he's going to bring back Binyamin. Like he said, I'll be a sinner all my life if I don't bring back Binyamin. Which means even for Olam Haba. Now, it's from there that the Gemara learns out of Makkos Daf Yud Aleph that the nidui of a chacham, even if it was with a stipulation, and the stipulation didn't even come true, also has an effect. So Yehuda, although he actually did bring back Binyamin, still the nidui took effect. And therefore, that caused that he was in a state of disarray even after he had passed away. Until Moshe Rabbeinu stood up and he beseeched mercy for Yehuda. In front of Hashem, Rebbeinu Shalom, Master of the world. Who caused to Reuven to admit when he had moved around his father's bed was Yehuda, because he admitted to the story of Tamar, and that was the Messiah that they had. Now, the Medrash Gadol again, Reb Tanchuma, says that when Yehuda said Tzadka Mimeni, Reuben got up and he says, Bilbalti Yitzui Avi. When he heard his brother say that he is, who's embarrassed to tell Tati whatever, but he heard his brother saying he was Mizana with Tamar and he admitted to it, so he got up and says, you know what? I moved around Tati's bed. And now, so therefore, that was what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling to Hashem. Yechi Ruvain, the skeleton of Reuben is intact, as if he's alive, and therefore, V'zois Yehuda, and this of Yehuda, that his bones are rolling around? What do you mean? The whole reason why Reuben admitted in the end the Schus Hakim was because he heard Yehuda being Maida. Miyad, right away, that's what the pasuk says, Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. Hashem hears the voice of Yehuda, meaning, Al Evrei L'Shafa, that the limbs went back into the place where they're connected to into the joints. But what happened is that so although now his bones were back in place, but they weren't letting him up to the yeshiva in Shemayim to discuss and learning with the other chacham. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu continues to daven. That's all there in the psukim over there. Vel amay tibiyano, and to his people you should bring him, so that he can be amongst his people all the other time in the chacham in Bez and Shalmala, in the yeshiva Shalmala. Okay, so he was able to get into the yeshiva. But he didn't know how to handle, to discuss in the learning with the other rabbis in the yeshiva Shamala, in the yeshiva in heaven. So therefore Moshe Rabbeinu continues to daven. Yodav Ravloi. He should have an abundance in his hands, meaning he should be able to win his disputes with the other Talmidei Chachamim in Shemayim. As Rashi says, the word Yodav is a terminology of Mulchama, which is the Melchamta Shel Teira, the war of Torah, coming with the hands. You see, little guys who really learn, the hands look like it's going to hit the ceiling. Hands are moving. It's a Melchamta Shel Teira. So let Yehuda have that he could win. Okay, fine. But the problem was but he wasn't Zayich, he wasn't meriting that his teaching should be according to the halacha. He wasn't meriting that he should say something that should be received by the other Yeshivalite in Shemayim. So therefore Moshe Rabbeinu continued to daven. He says, Ve'ezer mitzarav tiyah, that assistance from his oppressors should be. Meaning to say that it should be Zayich, that his word should be taken effect on his disputants, on his combatants or whatever, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu daven that his word should be in this Kabbalah and it should have Shmaitzli with the Hilchasa. But then the Gemara says, Bishlam Yehuda Da'idi says, I understand why Yehuda admitted his guilt. Like Tisrav Tamar. Tamar was about to be burnt in the fires because she was Eisha Zanunim. She had all these. She was pregnant with these children. So he was stopping her being burned, saying it was me. Ela Reuven lama li da'idi. Why is Reuven admitting that he's the one who moved around Tati's bed? I consider this as audacious, as someone who has a brazenness, who specifies his sins to the public. It looks like he's not embarrassed. He says, yeah, I remember a few years ago, no, I'm not going to say something, an example, if you're trying to listen to it. Yeah, but I had done, X, Y, and Z, right? You don't say these things, you're embarrassed. You don't. So why is Reuven admitting it? You don't say things that you don't specify it. Says the Gemara, so that the brother shouldn't be suspect from the father, because the father's like, okay, one of you guys did it, and he's thinking maybe it's one of this, maybe one of this. So that there was a purpose in him admitting, so that the father doesn't suspect the rest. Now then the Mishnah continued and said, if she says, okay, you're right, I was mezana. So the halacha says the Mishnah is okay, sheveres ksubasa, we write a receipt for the ksuba, and she leaves. So the Gemara wants to make a dik and say that, shamat mina, we see from this, that kaizvin shaver, that when a woman gets paid her due, or we cancel that debt, we write a receipt. What's the significance of this? There's a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yisi in Baba Basra Daf Kof Ayin on the base. Rabbi Yehuda says we don't write receipts. Why don't we write receipts? Rather, we tear up the document, because if you wrote receipts, now you're making the lender or whoever it is to have to protect the receipt forever from mice, and that was rampant in the Talmudic times. And because anytime if you wait a little bit amount of time, I'll bring my ksuba. 10 years later, it says, yeah, I never got paid my ksuba. So he says, prove it. It's like mice ate up my receipt a long time ago. So no, what we do is we don't write receipts. We're just going to tear up the document. Then she won't be able to collect anymore. Seemingly from our Mishnah, you see that we write a shiver, and as we see that's what Mishnah said. So Abai says no. Tani mikaras. No, it's not a raya. Instead of saying that we sheveres as a ksuba, the Mishnah should say mikaras, that we tear up the star of the ksuba. Which Amalei Rava says, what do you mean by sheveres ketani? But that's not what the Mishnah says. It doesn't say mikaras. It says sheveres, which means that you break it, which means that you write a receipt. So Elam Rava says a different raya why it's not a raya, a different interpretation. It says it's b'makom she'en kaisim ksuba skinan. We're talking about in a place where they don't write a ksuba, meaning that they would rely on the Tanai of Bezdin that they instituted that a basula gets 200 zuz and a almana gets 100. And when they would divorce, so what they would do is she would bring her get and she would collect, say, look, I'm divorced, so I get my ksuba. When she would become widowed, she would bring witnesses that her husband died and she would collect. So the thing is, but over here, since it's not possible, Rabbi Yehuda agrees that you write a shaver, because it's better that he should have at least some proof that he paid up, meaning that he doesn't owe it, so that she cannot go ahead and collect again when he subsequently, let's say, dies, and bring Eidei Misa and then collect. Here, we have no option because there's no divorce, there's no death. So what are you supposed to do? There's no ksuba. If there's a ksuba, of course, we don't write a shaver. We tear it up. But here, we're talking about it's a place where they don't write a ksuba. They don't write a ksuba, so generally, what happens is that there's either death. Why is the woman collecting ksuba? There's either death or there's a get. So then we say, okay, give the get, we'll tear it up, or show Aiden that he died. But here there's none of that because it's a Sotah. It's not a divorce, and neither is it a death. So therefore, that's why we're saying that, okay, you write a shaver, and then you hope for the best that the mice will not eat that up. And that's why here it's different. Thank you to Anytime for hosting us.